every one of us in this room are very interested in LA28. Everyone is interested in the Olympic Games, in the Cultural Olympiad. This is a topic that, for Arts for LA at least, we get regular email communications about this very thing. It's a big, big moment. We're all curious about how LA28 will raise awareness around the arts, and we're all curious about the legacy that LA28 and the Olympics will leave here in Los Angeles. Today, I'm hoping that through this conversation, we'll be able to get some updates and figure out some ways in which artists, arts organizations can really participate in the planning processes. We're all interested in creative ways of funding these efforts too. And so I just want to start by saying that really through Arts for LA's involvement and engagement in the LA28 local hiring working group, we've gotten an inside look into collaborating with LA28, and we know that LA28 has been working really hard to ensure that the community is being heard, the community is being included in the process, and we're really fortunate today to have Erikk Aldridge, who is the Vice President of Impact, here with us today. So if we can offer a warm welcome to Erikk Aldridge, please. Hi, folks. I really want to start by introducing Erikk. Erikk has dedicated his life to advocating for and developing social impact programs that have really enriched the lives of thousands of Angelenos. His extensive career in nonprofit social impact, corporate philanthropy with companies like AEG, Disney, the LA Dodgers, the LA Lakers, and this one I love most, the Boys and Girls Club of Venice. All of these experiences are really helping him in his leadership now at LA28. And what he's charged with doing within the organization is expanding their commitment to youth sports and economic empowerment. This includes the workforce development opportunities and the development of arts, culture, and transportation strategies for LA28. So once more, can we welcome Erikk?
I tell you all, and I was telling Gustavo this is such a easy conversation for me to have with all of you because I grounded on one thing in particular, and that is, one, am I old enough to have worked all those different jobs? That's a lot of jobs. But you know, I'm an LA kid, born and raised in Inglewood, and you know, my Olympic story is in 1984, I was a ball boy at the Forum. They had a pretty good guy on that team, Michael Jordan. Fast forward some 40 plus years, I have this opportunity to be the steward for the LA28 Olympic and Paralympic Games coming back to the City of Angels. And so for me, the work that me and the team and our stakeholders are doing right now is really anchored on that belief that this needs to be about shared opportunity throughout the region in all the areas that Gustavo mentioned. And so delighted to just kick off this conversation and get into some of the updates about the games, its footprint, and we had a new announcement earlier this week, early last week. If you didn't miss it, I'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, but Erikk, you know, I was connecting with one of my board members prior to hopping on here, and one of the things that he mentioned is sports and the memories that sports elicits in many of us as we're thinking about the Olympics, and how there's this incredible opportunity in this moment to draw that linkage between sports, arts, entertainment. There's going to be really this convergence of moments that are happening. And I know we have leadership in this room, and I'm thinking about you, Danielle, our former executive director at Arts for LA, who has been working really hard to ensure to ensure that arts and culture is a meaningful part of this conversation. I remember it was maybe in 2019, you were doing a series of roundtables to connect arts leaders around this very topic. It's a really important moment for us as a community. And I just want, if you can start, Erikk, with an overview of the work that you're currently doing with LA28, and tell us, what does this opportunity mean for Los Angeles?
So I'm going to start off with a quick high-level snapshot of the games and where we stand right now. And I think that will help you all kind of think about where the opportunities will be. And I'm going to start with the footprint of the game. So Los Angeles is the host city. So if you think about Paris in 2024, Paris is the host city. So the United States isn't the host is the city. And so that's the city of Los Angeles. We are going to have several sports parks that are going to be here in Los Angeles. I'm going to work quickly from south to north. The Long Beach Sports Park, anchored by Belmont Shores area, and the Long Beach Sports Arena will be a sports hub. Move north to Dignity Health Sports Park, the home of the LA Galaxy. That will be a sports hub. North of that, and a little bit to the west, you have Hollywood Park in Inglewood, which is anchored by SoFi Stadium, and Intuit Dome, which is a new arena that's coming on board. Then, of course, in the traditional corridor of the Coliseum, USC, LA Live, Crypto.com Arena, the Sepulveda Basin, down to UCLA, which will be the home of the Athletes Village, Santa Monica Beach. Those are some of the locations that you will see here in Los Angeles. So I mentioned that because it's important as you think about, what the opportunities will be. That gives you a snapshot of, depending on where you're doing your services and programming, et cetera, it gives you a little bit of understanding of where those opportunities are. Now, beyond the sport program, and I don't know if you all heard this, but I'll share it because it's just something fun to sharing. We made an announcement last week around 6 new sports coming to the games, all really focused on changing the game and really layering in at the highest level gender equity. So you have baseball, softball, America's pastime. You have lacrosse, men's and women's, a North American started sport. You have squash, so all you racket players in the different racket sports still taking off. We have flag football, men's and women's, so you think about the #1 sport in America. And then cricket, which is the #2 fan sport in the world. So from that footprint that I laid out in those new sports, in addition to all the sports that we know and love, that is kind of the snapshot of the games. And there's one thing that I want to share with you all, and I need you all to be advocates for, is this will be the 3rd Olympiad here in Los Angeles, Gustavo. The first time that the Paralympics will take place here in Los Angeles. So what does that mean as it relates to disability inclusion and the opportunities for our young people and our athletes that are involved in adaptive sports? So that's something that, moving forward, I want you all to help us with that this is the LA28 Olympic and Paralympics that are coming to Los Angeles.
It's amazing. That's amazing. And you mentioned the Olympiad. I know something we want to make sure to talk about is the Cultural Olympiad, but I want to put a pin on that.
We need to go back and talk about some other important work too, Gustavo.
Yeah, I think one of the things I want to ensure that we spend a little bit of time explaining is this local hiring working group, which is an initiative that I know is very important to LA28. It centers around procurement and workforce development and the strategies that LA28 is putting in place when it comes to hiring. And so can you share with the Arts for LA community here today what exactly this local hiring working group is? We're proud to be a part of it, but just can you share with folks what this is all about?
So, as I mentioned, the city of LA is the host city, and with that, we have an agreement with the city. And in that agreement, we have some mechanisms to make sure that we are living up to what I mentioned about shared economic opportunity throughout the region. So we have stood up 3 working groups, one in sustainability, one in local hire and workforce development that Gustavo represents Arts for LA on, and the other is community business and procurement. These working groups are made up of subject matter experts in the nonprofit sector and the civic sector who work on these areas each and every day to make sure that Angelenos have all the opportunities afforded to them in those different spaces. So us at LA28, we want to make sure as we're developing our impact and sustainability plans that this is not an exercise of Erikk Aldridge and the LA28 team sitting in a conference room coming up with policies and direction that's not informed by the community. We immediately went out to organizations to be a part of these working groups so that we can really be informed by people who are in it every day. And that's critical to this work because it can't happen without those key stakeholders. So a hand for Gustavo for his work and volunteering on a quarterly basis to sit in on those meetings. I really appreciate it. And he's joined by many other people as well. Many of you probably know out in this space, but this is critical work that's happening, which will really lay the groundwork on what we do from a impact and sustainability standpoint.
And one of the things I really want to ensure to share with y'all is that one of the first deliverables or outcomes of the work of this local hiring work group is a sustainability plan. And this is something that I think the working group will be releasing very soon. It's something that Arts for LA will ensure that we distribute broadly to the community, but it really does articulate the sustainability efforts around this. And important document, we have been advocating to ensure that arts and culture is adequately reflected in the sustainability document. And so really want to thank you also, Erikk, for being receptive to us continuing to advocate for this. It's so important. I do want to just take a moment here and shift gears here. A lot of folks in this room represent arts and culture organizations. They are artists themselves. They are passionate and fierce advocates. And I know more than once I have heard, what is going on with the Olympics? Like, where is the planning? Where are the organizations meeting and convening and talking and informing? Have we missed the boat? Is basically what we continue to hear from the field. And I know there have been many folks who have also compared currently what's happening in Los Angeles and looking at the timeline, for example, in Paris. And there's a lot of concern around, shouldn't we be further ahead than we actually are? So help us address that issue as a community. Help us understand where are we with the planning for the Cultural Olympiad? How can organizations and artists and arts advocates who care about this, how do they get involved? Have we missed the boat?
No, I think this is one of the main reasons why, I decided to come and continue to try to go out and speak to different organizations and stakeholders. So if you can envision the games being a masterpiece, where we are with the Cultural Olympiad is we're at the store buying paintbrushes. We haven't started that process yet. We need to develop a pathway. We need to develop a way that makes the most sense for Los Angeles in 2028. And so in saying that, I think the most important thing I want to share with this group is there is plenty of time for you to be engaged. Being a part of Arts for LA in this conversation and forward conversations is really important, right? Because this is going to be a process. We have to figure out what is the process going to be for us, and then how do we, think through from San Fernando to San Pedro, which is very broad, and everywhere in between. That's Los Angeles. And so if we want to reflect those communities as it relates to the arts, there's going to have to be a lot of conversations for that to happen. And so, it is the early stages. Gustavo, we are trying to figure out what our model will be. We are also working with the county and Kristen's office to help be a convener of folks as well. And I think that process will be communicated out clearly as we move forward. But as it relates to Paris and others, we're not behind. And remember, the LA28 Games is a private endeavor. So unlike some of the other organizing committees in other countries, Paris, for example, a lot of their games are publicly funded. For LA28, is a fully privately funded endeavor. If we cost the taxpayers dollars in putting on the games, then all the things that I talked about as far as local hire, equitable procurement, arts and culture, no one will want to talk about that. So for us, really anchoring and understanding that to make this happen, this is going to be a private endeavor. This is not going to be driven by the state, county, city. It'll be driven by the private sector, and we'll have to get our arms around what that looks like and that model.
Thank you for that, Erikk. And our director of policy and advocacy, Erikk Aldridge, I hope y'all have had a chance to meet him. If not, please make a point to connect with Erikk. But Erikk, a few months ago, did do an initial conversation with Council Member Tracy Park, who is now the head of the committee for the Olympics locally, and we did also do some surveying of our membership-based organizations to get a pulse and sense for what's important for us to for the arts and culture community. All of that was passed on to Council Member Tracy Park, and we've also shared that information with you. One of the things that we're thinking a lot about too is just thinking back to 1984. Part of what we hear as a reflection of the 84 games was really around, it wasn't an adequate showcase of LA arts and culture. There were organizations here locally who have been doing the work. I was just talking to Erikk about what one of our former colleague, Deborah Padilla, she calls the LA11, organizations that have been in service 35 plus years. And that we have so many amazing organizations. I'm thinking Self-Help Graphics. I'm thinking about the list of organizations who have been serving. This is an incredible opportunity to really showcase the arts and culture work of these organizations on an international platform. And I'm just really curious, Erikk, I know you're saying that we haven't done the intensive listening with arts and culture yet. We're figuring out the processes. But how are you thinking about, in the process development, how are you thinking about engaging the smaller organizations, the smaller budget organizations, these anchor institutions that have been serving the community for 35 plus years, sometimes on very, very slim budgets? How are you thinking about that outreach to ensure that those folks have a seat at that table, And you don't have to limit your response to just arts and culture, but just generally speaking across the industries, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think our current working groups is a really good example, Gustavo, of how we are intentionally bringing people into the fold with the understanding that, we have to make sure that we have people who can be broad conveners of the message, right? So is it possible to meet with like everyone? Probably not. But it is important to make sure that we understand who those anchor institutions are so that they can be the conveners of the message. And then I do want to just touch a little bit on 1984. As I mentioned earlier, I was around then and a part of the games, I guess I would say as a workforce development case study. Um, but, everyone recognizes what 1984 was and what it wasn't. And so, again, going back to that shared opportunity is what we're anchoring on, and a clear understanding for us as an organizing committee and being well put in check by our stakeholders that this has to reflect Los Angeles, period. And just a little bit about the Cultural Olympiad for those who you don't know. The first Cultural Olympiad was in 1912, and they actually gave out medals for art competitions. And like most things, they evolve, right? And so then it, became international art installations being brought into the games, which you saw a little bit in '84. But these things continue to evolve because one thing we know about the creative community and the arts community, it is just that, very creative. And we need to make sure that, for 28, that we aren't looking backwards, we're looking forward, and we're really looking at, again, I don't want to belabor this, but like I'm from this community, and I know what that looks like and what it doesn't look like. And I think it's going to be really important for you all to stay tethered and connected so that we can hear through your mouthpiece what are the opportunities, what would you like to see, and how can we help connect you with the different opportunities tied to the games.
Thank you, Erikk. There is one other thing I wanted to connect the dot on for everyone here. I shared that our Director of Policy Advocacy, Ricky, did some community listening, some outreach to Tracy. One of the things that we did recommend as a part, or one of the things that we included in our note, rather, was we talked about the importance of establishing some sort of public/private fund to start to fund these efforts, and that being a critical component in starting that fundraising around all of this, because whatever the planning is and ultimately what ends up becoming the Cultural Olympiad, these are big investments and are going to require all of us as a collaborative, public-private dollars coming together to really fund all of these efforts. I know, Erikk, that every time I've talked to you, you light up when you talk about your experience leading the Boys and Girls Club of Venice, and that for me, it's reassuring to hear that from you, because I know that you're also a leader who understands nonprofit and community-based organizations and the difficulty, frankly, that it is, the hustle of leading arts nonprofit organizations. And so appreciate that you bring that lens and that perspective into all of this. I think that's going to be really important, especially as we figure out the ways in which to collaborate as a community to support the games.
Yeah, and I had a colleague who unfortunately wasn't able to make it, Lalo Marquez, who was our art director at Venice. But so thank you, because that's a very impactful part of my life. But I do want to talk about, we also have a responsibility to all of you. When you think about funding and the mechanisms, I can't tell you how many times we were just in the other auditorium talking about not enough funding for the arts, shortage of funding for the arts. Organizations, not being able to build capacity, etc. So a part of this model that we are developing, we have to be very careful on our end that we are not taking away from the investments that are being made into all of you, right? Because the games will be over in 2028. Arts for LA will continue, inner city arts will continue, Boys and Girls Clubs will continue, many of you will continue on with your organizations. And so that is a part of, when I talk about building a model, Gustavo, is we have to take those things into consideration, because, if you take money out of the pot, right, that's money out of the pot. And so really trying to figure out that model for 2028 is really important. And also understanding in 84 that from a elected official standpoint, they were able to do some things that you can't do from that seat anymore. Mayor Bradley could contact a corporate partner and just say, can you give us X number of dollars? I don't think Mayor Bass can do that in 2023, right? So these are changes in regards to how things are modeled and funded that we will figure out a pathway moving forward.
Really, really appreciate that too, Erikk. And I think one of the final questions I want to make sure to ask you is around the legacy of LA28. Many of us in this room have been very excited when we look at, for example, the organization LA84. Is that the sports foundation? Led by the incredible Renata. And this was something, my understanding of it is that this was one of the legacy efforts that LA84 left back in 84. And I'm just curious, how is LA28 thinking about the legacy that it leaves in Los Angeles? And how are you thinking about the legacy it leaves in Los Angeles in relation to the arts?
So first and foremost, we want to continue to be a catalyst. So when things are happening in Los Angeles that we're a part of, we want to be viewed as a catalyst. So for example, instead of us waiting after the games as it relates to youth sports, we've already stood up a Play LA program through the City of Los Angeles Department of Recreation and Parks, which provides free to as little as $10 for young people to participate in sport, try new sports, including some of the sports that I just mentioned that are part of our sport program. In addition, having the first ever publicly stood up adaptive sport program within the city of Los Angeles. And that was done through a $160 million commitment from the ILC, passed through to LA28 to the Department of Recreation and Parks. As we think about the long-term legacy, 84 went into their games with tremendous amount of goals and desires, but there's also the reality that they didn't go into it knowing that they were going to have the surplus to be able to stand up the 1984 foundation. So, we want to be, fiscally responsible and deliver a great games and be a catalyst. As it relates to the legacy, I think it'll be all the things that we do leading up to the games, all the work and contract opportunities that will happen that will help uplift some of the local businesses, help uplift the local artists in the creative community that are able to participate. And then the legacy will be, it'll be that shared economic opportunity moving beyond 2028. So I'm not sure what the tangible foundation legacy thing will be, but right now we're focused on being a catalyst.
Well, listen, Erikk, really, really appreciate you being here with us today. It is great to have you at the helm as Vice President of Impact at LA28. We're incredibly grateful that We are at the table for the local hire working group and want to continue to seek opportunities for other leaders in this room to be a part of these important conversations. This is an incredibly important moment for Los Angeles, biggest stage, and like one of my board members said, we all have that story, that personal story that connects back to sports, and everyone is going to be enjoying the games. How do we ensure that we create the partnerships, that we are working in collaboration as we're all leading up towards the games? You have a room full of folks here who are going to be watching closely, who are going to be, eager to jump into conversations, community conversations. And so thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here today. And we appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. I really appreciate it.